We good?
Oops, sorry.
Okay. All right. I'll ask the clerk to take attendance.
All right, Counselor Rockashell,
Here.
Counselor Clehood. Here. Counselor Dooling,
Here.
Counselor, do I do that?
Yes.
Okay, Counselor Doctor. Here. Counselor Fiorenza.
Here.
Counselor Manning,
Here.
Supervisor Michelangelo.
Yes, here. Okay. Let's see, we've got a 6:05 public hearing posted for the planning and zoning development fees. Is there anyone here wants to comment on that? I'll ask the clerk to take the roll or read the notice, excuse me. That's a H.
For the home rule request.
No, for the local law, planning and zoning development fee.
Typically, yeah, that'll help.
Is it this, please take notice, this thing, public hearing will be held by the town board. The town of DeWitt in the county of Onondaga and state of New York on Monday, the 24th of April, 2023. 6:35 p.m. in the town office. 5400 Butternut Drive, DeWitt, New York, on the question of amending section 15-10 of the DeWitt Town Code to establish a new development fee schedule. Copy of said proposed local law is on file at the office of the town clerk, 5400 Butternut Drive, DeWitt, New York. Examined by any interested person during regular business hours prior to the date of the hearing. Published by Angela Ablado, town clerk, April 12th, 2023.
Perfect. Thank you. Hey, is there any comment from the board? No. Just for summary's sake, the proposal is to allow the fees from the Department of Planning and Zoning to be based on construction costs as we move forward. And those rates be based on resolutions passed by future boards. Yes. With no other comments, individuals, I will close the public hearing. Yeah, I'll entertain a resolution to motion to pass the ordinance as structured.
I so move.
Okay, I have a motion from Karen, second from Jack. Call for the vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion's carried. Presentation of the 2022 audit. What's been second one? I could have the draft.
Your package is a presentation, so hopefully you can see that. Yep. Very similar to last year, so we do have it online. Try to go through this fairly quickly, so just the highlights, just. Any questions as we go through it, so hope we had some chance in the weekend to look over the financial statements. You know, we had nothing better to do. 50 more pages. Lots of good stuff.
Oh, my question.
Next to me is Bree Lane. She's been working with me the last couple of years. With me, actually, her business cards in your packages too, so behind mine. So she's working closely with me on the town audits, I guess I'll say. So just want to say overall, the audit went extremely well this past year. No issues or concerns from our aspect. So clean audit, clean audit opinions. So that's kind of like the best thing you can have. It's really nothing really to report. Kind of required communication, which I'll try to do here. So what I did is basically in slide 2, some of the bigger numbers, required communications, a lot of this stuff has not changed from past years. So I'll just kind of cover some of the bigger numbers. As you know, the retirement obligations, are part of, ERS system in the state of New York and the police and fire. So that's, changes, those numbers change based on actual, information from the state of New York. Basically, you're recording those numbers on your financial statement. So you have some workers' compensation liability, about $1.1 million, $1.2 million this year compared to about 783. You're part of the OSEBA plan last year as a 1/1/23, you changed, but you do have an overall deficit that's sitting out there. That's, $2.2 million sitting there, or 2.5 million right now. It's going to have to be settled over time. So with that, it's actually recorded on what we call your long-term financial statements, and it's a long-term type liability. So, you also have OPEB, that's your post-employment benefits. That's about $30 million this year. As you know, every other year you have a full valuation done by your actuaries. This is the off year. So all we're doing this year is really rolling for the balances from the previous valuation done 2 years ago. So basically the numbers are just amortization and then simple interest rate. So, and with the discount rate changing quite a bit as it's going upwards, that'll be discounted next year. The expectation, barring this rate dropping quite a bit, is that liability should drop exponentially next year quite a bit. Just like a simple 1% increase in interest rate changes that liability probably like almost $3+ million, barring new activity. So just to give you a perspective there. So that's why there's not a lot of big change there. You'll see a major change next year. We have capital assets is, your roads, your infrastructure, your buildings. So you got about $24 million net of depreciation. You got about $3.2 million of new additions this past year. Some of the biggest numbers, as I pointed out in your MD&A, was water tape, painting the insides of those. So that was quite a bit of capital improvements this past year. The next slide, slide 3, is just some of the required information, some of the information that's in your financial statements called RSI, required supplementary information. No different than past years, but it actually breaks out information for, for the last, some of those guys go back up to 10 years, but, basically gives you a summary of all the longer term type stuff like, the pension systems, the OPEB, and some budgetary comparison schedules in the back of the financial statement. As you can see, no difficulties in performing the audit, no disagreements with management. Carrie, her team does an excellent job preparing everything for us, being ready for us, and working through all our questions every year. So I want to say hats off, and your whole team. It's not just Carrie, but we get everything we can from everybody very quickly, very timely. I say that for all my clients. So. Slide 4, just kind of your financial statements is kind of the basic financial statement, the big picture stuff. As I said, the auditor's opinion, the only thing I really own, basically give me a clean audit opinion, unmodified. That's the best type of opinion you can have. You can't get anything better than that. So, good job. And from a board, that's something that, hats off to it, it's great. It's Carrie.
That's it. Yay, Carrie.
So
I'll skip regular auditor.
When you have former auditors working with you, it makes your life a little easier too. So the next slide, slide 5, is further information in your financial statement breaking down. One of the things I always point out to folks is the governmental financial statement. If you look towards the middle, pages 21 to 42 are footnotes. So just describing a lot of information in your financial. Really not a lot of major changes this year. The only thing we note this year is in note 17 is the state comptroller reviewed a settlement between the general fund and the capital projects fund last year, and wanted you to put the $700,000 back on the books as due from the general fund and due to. So basically, they said we want to wait until you can exhaust all your chances of getting the grant money in there. So that was the state OSC's recommendations. What we did was just adjust the beginning fund balance. Net across the town didn't change. It's just
The state knows they're owe most of their money.
yeah.
It's
It's kind of odd because I don't see the state OSC actually make adjustments like that. Very rarely do they do that. But sometimes they do. And then, so we went back and we call restate the beginning, fund balance. But overall, the town's fund balance didn't change at all, which is between the capital projects fund and the general fund. And if you look at your financials, you can see your capital projects fund is now a deficit of $700,000 instead of being zero. Because, you know, you gotta get the grant money in first, make that whole. So slide 6, just go through some of the financial numbers. This is your statement of net position. These are the big hitting numbers. I'll just kind of cover big point here, is you got $52 million of total assets and deferred outflows compared to 49 million. You know, your current assets consist of cash equivalents. So you have, if you look at your fund financial statements, you got, you know, quite a bit of cash in there. See that net pension asset there, that's actually with the ERS system. What that is, that's the proportionate share of assets. So that basically means as of this year end, the state of New York's pension system's overfunded per se on an actual basis. So you have an asset theoretically of 759 compared below in the current liabilities, non-current is the police and fire, which is not fully funded. So that changes almost every year depending on interest rates, discount rates. So I try not to get people too excited about it, but basically you have a proportionate share of that liability or asset depending on what's going on with the state. You have to make the required contributions every year, you know, on a cash basis, which is actually disclosed in your back of your footnotes. You know, so you make that 100% contribution. So if you were short of that, we have to disclose that you didn't make your full payment, but you guys have historically have always made 100% of what's required to be made in cash. So you can see, you know, not a lot of big swings and big numbers per se. The statement of net position here is actually your what we call economic basis of financials. This is your fund financial statements, which is kind of the cash basis. And this is the longer term liabilities and assets all combined together. The next slide is slide 7. This is the LDC, Local Development Corp. If you recall last year, this gets brought into your financial statements because it's what they call a blended component unit. So those numbers, we audit the LDC by itself and issue a financial statement for that, which is exactly the numbers as of 3/31, which is due back then. And then we actually include these numbers in your financial statements in a different column. So this just kind of highlights this. As you know, that's a lease agreement between the town of DeWitt and the LDC, basically to mirror the bonds that are outstanding, you know, for the fire department, firehouse. And then you pay for any ancillary charges that, you know, pass through. So that's what that statement of net position really represents there. So the lease liability, lease receivable coming in, and then, you know, the liabilities going out the door is long-term bonds. That's going to finish up in 2026.
2027.
2027.
Until April 2027.
Okay.
So what is this called then, Mike? What?
It's on page 19.
I know,
It's with that, LDC is the Local Development Corporation.
I know. How should I be labeling the summary statement? What should I call it?
The summary statement?
Yes, it's just this one. I saw what.
Yeah.
What do I call this? You went a little bit fast for me.
Oh, the summary statement here?
Yes, please.
Yeah, it's a statement of net position, and you have, you know, they have what they call governmental funds, like a statement of net position that's, you know, you have a statement of net position on your proprietary type funds.
Understood.
So that's really why we break down these two slides separately. One, you actually really control the government, the town, and then the LDC, because you're so closely related, you kind of have because your activity is so closely related, because your lease payment goes to them.
I get it.
So that's why we call that a blended component.
Got it.
And on page 12 of the statement of net position, you'll see primary government has 2 columns. That's why this should be summary.
And reference page numbers, if you look at your slides at the top of the page number and the financials.
Okay.
I know there's a lot flipping because we got 50+ pages, so.
Just wanted to know what exactly, want to make sure I was on point.
Like on this LDC statement. How do we read how much money we've got if we have to do major repairs over there at the building?
That really does not show up here, Jack, at all. So basically, this is just a snapshot as of today, your balance sheet, your cash. That's sitting in there. So it doesn't show the, you know, long-term, no.
Thank you.
That was slide 7, so we'll just jump to slide 8 real quick, give you a kind of a big picture of the total revenues. This is pretty consistent with what you probably saw. This is your governmental activities, meaning the town's activities. You can see the mortgage tax, you know, decreased a little bit. Your property and, you know, other taxes is pilot. That's your property tax levy to 19 million. You can see kind of, you know, charges for services, water charges, things of that nature, operating grants, any kind of grants that come in. Recall, there's ARPA monies you have that's come in the door, but you haven't really spent it yet. So you got, most that's actually deferred revenue. So sitting as another liability. So you don't see that come through as your revenues on this statement. So as you start using that money, that'll be, reversed out of deferred revenue and then, revenue good and expense. The next slide is just the continuation of like kind of the, the income statement there. Let's just break it down. So what you basically see is, you have about $1.9 million total profit on an economic base, meaning when you say that, that's, all your assets, liabilities put together, changes in the OPEB, things that you don't necessarily control on an annual basis, depending on the state of New York. That shows that you actually have, last year you basically broke even at $46,000, and this year about $1.9 million, which is on an economic basis. So that shows that your net position, which was a deficit overall, was $12 million at the beginning of the year, now down to $10 million. But that's basically because of, really, we've talked about this in the past, OPEB, because that's an unfunded liability that sits there. So as that goes up and down, that's the majority of what causes that net position to be in a negative.
Yeah.
The next slide, slide 10, is really just your business, a continuation to LDC. This is actually, maybe Jack, this is where you can, look at, see what's going on from a numbers. But basically what's happening is you're bringing in lease income, the 148, 145,000, which ties into the principal. And you can see the interest comes out the door. So really what you're seeing is you spent $138,000, most of it's interest. The rest of the items are being really, funded from the town of DeWitt. Utilities, insurance. So you don't really see any capital like reservation there to help for repairs and maintenance. So that gives you the snapshot of, you brought in 148 of revenue plus 138. It's pretty much break even because you're pretty much principal and interest is known. That's based on your lease agreement. And then the rest of the expenses are items that you pick up to cover.
Have you seen other entities holding a reserve there for potential maintenance costs that they're anticipating, but they don't want to put on the books yet?
Some places will do that. They will set aside a reserve, a repair and maintenance type reserve. You can see you're sitting at a net position of, $366,000. A lot of that's actually tied up, because it's restricted cash for the bonds. So as you want to start setting aside, that would mean that you really have to have the town do it, put more money in cash to, to park it in there. So.
It's probably a question for lawyers, but could you just pay off the bond? Give the village the building?
I mean, I think you're probably with the bond coming due so soon. I mean, 27, as Jack said, there's probably no prepayment. It's probably, if you wanted to. I don't know where off the top of my head base, but usually when you're this late in the bond, there's like a ratio. If you pay it off too early, you get, 5%, 2%. I can't imagine there's.
I'm just wondering.
Yeah.
We'll talk later.
Yeah, okay. Well, I guess slide number 11, I started doing this last year for you guys. I thought this was probably a more important slide. This is what you guys see on a more annual or monthly basis from Carrie and her team is the fund balances. So this kind of summarizes the fund balances over the last 5 years. And I kind of break them down by all your major funds and all, all the other different funds. You can see, unfortunately, the capital project fund is a deficit as of 700,000, which is the state of New York. But you can see you got really healthy, funds about 7.1. Water is a little bit under, you can see it's in a deficit as of the end of the year, but that's the way accounting works for, so when you issue the ban, your borrowing you did for the water tank, ban is just a cash and a liability, doesn't get recognized as revenue in the fund until it gets converted to long-term debt or you pay it down. So if you pay it down and convert it, so this is why you say there's a deficit there, even though you got, a few $1 million in cash to pay for the, it doesn't hit your fund balance. On the entity-wide financials is taken care of, it's kind of reversed out, but at the fund level, it looks like a deficit in the water districts.
So as I recall, it was about $2 million in ban that we banned for the water tanks. So that would, in theory, come out to closer to 700,000 would be where our actual fund balance should probably be.
I think it was, we've only spent, 1.6 million on that.
That's the four water tanks, right? Or we
Mhm.
just comparison of paint.
Yeah, it was that project.
Yeah, that may not be all done yet, that's fine.
Yeah, we haven't spent all of the ban.
Yeah. more-
There's the SCADA and the remaining payments for the water tanks.
If we convert that into a note, we've got the increased water rates to
Mhm.
pay that off. We can erase
Yeah.
the balance as well.
I think, Jack, at the MD&A, we described some of that, some of the projects by name. If you saw that in the MD&A, we talk about the individual tanks that were paying and the price, you'll see that right in there. So check. So, you're really, from all your governmental funds, you're sitting at about $8 million. If it wasn't for the capital project being kind of moved back and forth, 700,000. But with the band sitting outstanding, if it wasn't for the band outstanding, you'd be consistent to last year, if not higher, about 9 point, It's a pretty healthy fund balances across the board. And the refuse district needs a little bit of, it's a little deficit there, so you just, need to work on that. So usually the state comptroller gets excited about any deficits, but they kind of look at it over a couple of years. So as long as you kind of get back into the, what we call the black, versus the red negative here. I don't think you have any questions or concerns. Last but not least is the last slide, out of the wind. We just talked about controls and processes. We look at controls and process across the organization. We don't have any material weaknesses or any, items to report to you. So it's all very, very good, excellent. The controls, items that we review and test, we're working effectively, including the board's review. And, we do put some effort, looking at your board minutes and making sure, the governance is really important for, any kind of governance agency that, your oversight is actually looking at items. So no control issues. Out at the wind, LDC, you can see no material weaknesses. Now, the biggest thing with the LDC, we mentioned this in the past few years, is there was a separate board years and years ago that met. We kind of did all, you really need to do that and follow that, have the boards meeting and meeting those requirements, especially because of the public authority reporting, the tariffs from the state of New York. But we mention that every year, I feel. But because the financial numbers are actually included, part of your financials will go to the state. I think the state maybe kind of looks a little past that, but technically the LBC is supposed to have their own meetings. And then the court audits, this actually went very well this year. Probably better than in past years. We're just gonna, close the circle, loop back with Dave and Sam there. So we have no really, issues or concerns there. I just wanted to make sure we communicate with those guys first, their reports, and then come back to you at the next time around. Probably the next board meeting, if that's okay with you guys. But we're just cleaning up that report. So I would say both. And then Sam called me during the middle of the year. I know Sam from one of my clients, so he called me during the middle of the year for some concern. And when I walked him off the cliff, I don't know if I did, but I helped him. And then Dave, it was
Still with us, so it's.
I know. I saw him on Zoom this morning for another meeting. I was on for a board meeting. I was waiting for him to say something, but I was like, no, separate business. But no, I just want to say the court audit, the clerks did a nice job this year, and Bree worked closely with them. We're just cleaning up the report. But I wanted to make sure they saw the reports first. But that's really all we had. Like I said, Terry's team does an excellent job. You guys have a great team here. Plans to technically do the bonding reasons by April 30th. So we wanted to make sure we met that timeline. What I've learned over the years, stay off lists, and it's good. So if you want to do bonding or anything, being on time is really important.
And of course, where are we on the village audit? Doing an audit for the village research.
Actually, I didn't know we were truthfully we were appointed yet until like 2 Fridays ago. So we were going to do this after. So, we were communicating, myself and Ed, we were talking, and then we got a little behind in the ordinary audits. I wanted to get this done. I'm going to communicate with those guys and start that in the next couple of weeks. But I want to sit with, whoever you guys think. I'm going to, talk to you, Ed, and sit and go through it. And I talked to Terry about it. So let me make sure we're on the same page, or anybody, and let me know when you're here. I want to make sure, because when we get over there, first time around was kind of a learning event. So this time around, we kind of have some sense of what's going on.
Yeah, actually, I think you're in a solid position. Current administration is probably going to be a better or easier group to work with. You have the past numbers to pick up from. So yeah, I'd be happy to sit down with you. I'll include a counselor.
Yeah. And you let me know when works best for you guys, and then hopefully next week or so, so we can really. I was, both Bree worked on it and another staff, Brian, so we're gonna try to keep the consistency. Going back out there, which is kind of rare in the public county world nowadays, they actually have. But if we, keep consistency, so we know, and, like Ed said, if new administration over there is really open, that's great. I mean, it's, it'll make. And our plan is to audit all the way through 12/31/22. So, and we spoke about that, so we'll get those numbers. Because as you know, villages are on a different fiscal year end, so we finished up through 5/31/21. So technically, they're gonna close out 5/31/22, and we're gonna roll it forward to 12/31/22. So kind of mirrors town of DeWitt's numbers.
So we'll be able to look across the calendar.
Yeah, and that was a challenge the first time around. I knew how they,
That's why coming back at this, we'll be able to do this.
we have a good 12 month versus 12 months, and we can roll for the remaining.
Is there any way the village changing that to be the same as us? I know we've talked about that with them before. Resistance, they didn't want to do that, but have you seen any other villages that do that where they could change it?
I have not seen it, stay at the 5/31. I've seen some places switch to 12/31, depending, I mean. It's
up to them.
up to them,
Yeah.
really, it's hard to, yeah. I mean, they should be able to produce information that's, in accordance with GAAP, meaning, governmental county standards. Effectively, as of 12/31/22, that kind of rolls forward. Historically, a lot of villages or towns don't necessarily cut off in the middle of a year. But they should be able to cut it off as of 12/31, and reconcile, items, to the dollar for you guys. It's your fiscal year.
Any questions? Questions from the audience?
And we love questions.
Are you allowed to have all of those? Do you have an extra copy by any chance?
We got yeah, the whole thing.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry to
Yeah, no
interrupt.
That was exciting, About financial statements.
Thanks getting all.
I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Little light reading. I know. They're the slick financial, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is any other, if there's any questions, between, we're trying to issue this.
Interested in becoming an accountant?
You start hiring young too, if you want. No, it's actually a great profession. I don't want to, take up the guy's time, but it's, you get to see a lot of great stuff. Man, I'll tell you over my years. Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, a little bit of it. It's not really that hard of that, really. It really is.
Excel formulas at this point. You need to know the right formula, right? You don't even need to know math,
Yeah.
just I'll speak.
The math, yeah.
Sarah, you don't even need to know math.
Don't scare people. You can manipulate.
Yeah.
Manipulate.
We're not manipulating anything. We're fine.
With a lot of Excel and that, there's some.
It has to sound like.
I always tell people, accountants, you add stuff, subtract stuff, once in a while we multiply a few things.
Oh, yeah.
Crazy
Yeah.
times. We start dividing out things and it's that, I'm not saying it's, so. You do get to see a lot of great, interesting, you get to see a lot of insights, from companies, businesses, towns, private, that's what you really get to see. With all my years of doing this, I've been doing this a lot longer than, I can look at a fire hydrant and say, I know when that was made, because I used to audit fire hydrant companies and, when it was made, the B on the side, day shift, night shift, the day, the casting, I've seen all that, so it's pretty cool. I've been to, clean rooms, I've seen chips being made, I've been in full white suits and stuff, so it's pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, just did an audit of our hydrants, and wouldn't it be fine, like a 1907,
1910.
1910, we found. Thank God there has not been a fire at that location.
Bushes or something,
Wow.
1910.
Does it work?
We don't
I
want.
don't believe we have a hose that would hook to it.
Touch it because it's like an antique.
Yeah.
Works, yeah.
No.
That's it. I think they told us, he said, save it.
Yeah, no, it's interesting the stuff you learn as, counting, the kind of stuff you see, not just numbers, but you work with the clients and see, it could be towns, not-for-profits, or, it's pretty interesting stuff out there.
And I want to thank Mike and Bree.
I know.
And Carrie and team, you.
Mary, it's in there, and Bree's the younger of the two of us, so she can take care of
If you didn't know.
it. Now,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to accept the audit. From Joe and a second from Coach Carey and Budget and Audit Committee.
Yeah.
I'll call for the vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain, motion's carried. Great, thank you. So this has got to get filed by Friday?
Yeah.
I already know what's that.
Of course you have, we knew that.
Postage all set. All right, but but Peter, we'll keep you here any later. Let's drop down where,
Entertaining.
what's that?
Said that you're fine. It's entertaining.
Okay.
These
Let's
audits,
see
boy,
what-
they start, your heart starts to beat faster.
Which trucks?
Oh, you're here for food trucks, so we're gonna jump down to food trucks. Okay,
I put that on the agenda after I had chatted earlier with Peter. And then later, the email exchanges with Kelly Grace Smith about
I'll try to give a little summary of the situation. So I believe most of you are aware that the rec department wants to host trucks at their weekly concert events at Carrier Park alongside a farmer's market. And this board, prior boards have kicked food trucks around forever. In the old days, Canal Day started with several restaurant tours and food vendors that would come to Canal Days, and they never. They'd set up a tent, they'd set up tables, they'd set up cook. Then it slowly evolved to the point where we got to a couple of food trucks, but mainly over the years, it was things like a Skippy ice cream truck or something. And so there was always a fine line of using food trucks versus local food vendors, but for the most part, the history is with a restaurateur that would come and set up a shop for that day. Past couple of years, there's been a couple of food trucks that were associated as well with local restaurateurs. But the position of past boards, I think the most recent discussion is a couple of years old. But this board comes from those individuals because we have a high number of fast food restaurants and restaurants in general throughout the town, and they pay property tax. And so food trucks, if licensed, are at an unfair advantage. A number of our restaurateurs came to us when trucks started to emerge and registered their disdain because there was a food truck, for example, over at Home Depot. And the local restaurants felt that that food truck was taking a good portion of their lunch crowd. Contractors showed up at Home Depot. They were there anyways for business purposes. They would grab a lunch and go. And there were vendors right across the street. They used to see a lot of those patrons. So anyways, the discussion here today is directed to what are our options going forward? Do we license and permit food trucks? And if we do we set a payment schedule that makes our justification of that defensible to a property owner that's paying a high premium on property tax? Can we set a fee for a daily food truck? We set a different fee for, let's say we have an office park, and they have a special event. They want to bring in a food truck. Right now, it's not allowed. We know it occurs. It's largely complaint driven, right? When an office park or Five Waters or Pioneer or somebody has a food truck in their park once a year, we set a daily permit fee for those. We let Parks and Rec run food trucks as we don't allow private vendors to do it. I mean, those, we know Shopping Towns ran a couple events so far this year. It's the county. We don't have any authority to stop them from doing it. Anyways, with that, I'll open the floor to discussion. Peter, if there's something you want to add, but this board should come up with a policies. Either it's flat out against it and we follow our own laws and everybody else has to, or we set some schedule. And some policies, and then that, you know, if we do pass a law that allows them, the same way we can set the fees through resolution over the years. It could be a daily event fee, it could be we can rent locations throughout the town, right? And could be an annual permit fee that's required by that vendor. The annual permit fee would have to be comparable / defensible to the nearby fast food owner that feels we're cutting into their potential business. Any thoughts? Yeah,
I mean, my thought is. I would set two parameters, special events only. And what the definition of a special event is, I don't know, and. Second would be first priority would go to. Restaurants, restaurateurs who. Have physical locations in the town to it.
Brick and mortar.
Brick and mortar. If your headquarters, I mean, Tully's.
Yeah.
I don't think Tully's does Tully's have any,
they're not located in DeWitt.
but their headquarters,
Yes, and
but their
they're-
headquarters, their office building is located in DeWitt.
On Flyer.
So that would be acceptable.
Right, when you say preference to, essentially it's our own little home rule if we want to, but what does that look like to you? My concern is we don't have a lot. I'm thinking of the restaurants that we have here. We don't have a lot that I've seen out in food truck territory. And I don't know, does that mean that we don't allow other towns at all if?
I think we give first preference. I mean, Bull and Bear, I think Tully's does food trucks. I think there's a lot of food trucks out there. And, you know, it would take a little investigation, a little bit of research, but
Well, it could be part of the permit process. They have to grant a permit, so they have to file, they have to give a business location in the town of DeWitt.
So what do we mean by preference? Are we
Right.
counting a discounted fee or a?
That's where I was going. What's the question?
well, the preference is if there's a special event. I think they get contacted first, say, hey, can you guys make this event? If you can't make that event, then. Open up to.
See, I was thinking it that way also, per event, that the priority would go to the DeWitt businesses which have food trucks. We would advertise, analogous to the bidding process.
So they would
almost.
have the open lot for the rec department's farmer's market.
Exactly.
Right,
I can see that for town events. How about for private?
Right.
I say the same thing.
How does the office park upstate portfolio, for example, have an annual event that they host?
They would call the preferred vendor. They would call the planning and zoning office and,
Say
Get our
it's
list.
eligible for use?
you know, I personally don't want to open it up to others, a grand melee of having 8 food trucks in Whitewoods office park, having 4 over in Pioneer. Just letting them set up all over the town. I don't think it's fair, and
I'm so not to throw anybody under the bus, but the Tecumseh PTG for Teachers Appreciation Week.
Let's throw in Moses.
There was one time they had a breakfast food truck that came and they paid for the teachers to come over, and it was a coffee and a muffin or Danish or whatever it was. It was a very specialized kind of food truck kind of thing. I don't know. I know it was local, but I don't know if it was local to DeWitt or city or Manlius or whatever.
I mean, and that's a great example. I mean, again, as long as we set a policy.
And it's a special event.
And again.
Yeah, that's.
And perhaps planning and zoning can give an exemption.
So that's my question there is like, if they're trying to do a breakfast program and there's not a DeWitt food truck, a vendor that offers that would need to fall into that policy as well.
This was Tecumseh.
Yeah.
And most.
But right around the corner in Nottingham Plaza, there's a bagel shop that pays town taxes. Right?
But they're not mobile.
Understood, well, it could have been, I don't know, that's what I'm saying, but they're. If they had placed an order, could they have not had it delivered? Right?
Which they
I
have
also-
actually, which they have done before. I know in years previous, they've had a whole bunch of burgers that showed up, and I think it was a change of pace one year.
Let's just say, at the end of the year has stipulation truck.
Devil's advocate, these are the kinds of thoughts that need to go into the law, the ordinance.
Right.
That,
We need to consider too, for the entire catchment, that similar to the Tecumseh PTG, there's other organizations that host specific food trucks for their specific events. I don't even, the folks that I know that host it, I let them know that, hey, that's technically not allowed per town ordinance, but they don't even have awareness or purview to that. So I think once we figure out what it needs to look like, we need to be very vocal about it.
Won't put a new Bolton.
And would go into the,
well,
Is it
it'd go to the town,
that
newsletter,
right?
it'd go on the page, it'd go, and obviously, it's a new policy, so first-time offenders, probably it wouldn't be much of an offense, but the second time, you'd require that permit, right?
Right.
But there's another
It's a
component to this.
$50, $100 permit or something of that nature. And because it's new, if we enacted something in the next couple of months, this fall, somebody violates this, it doesn't, I can't see prosecuting permit, right? But
that's the flip side of grandfathering somebody in.
well,
So-
it's more an educational. process,
Exactly,
right?
and-
They get a notice, that says,
Yeah.
here's the violation.
Just in case you don't know what the policy is, but before you did this, now you've done it, now you know for next time.
Right.
That, but I know what you're,
There's other implications that go beyond giving privileges. A lot of these food trucks that come out are doing it on behalf of a fundraiser. So percentage of net sales will go back to whatever organization it is. So if we're going to give priority to do it eateries, we need to ensure that they're going to be on par with that, or just see what their feelings are, because that is why some locations are chosen. Is because their willingness to forego profit in order to help the fundraiser.
we also need whatever the schedule would be, and Peter and I have talked about this with reference to rentals and things of that nature, that we can't have so many different scales for this entity, this category, this, but that category is different because of that. So we need to also make it clean, because people aren't going to know where they fit.
Right, and it's not, if I may, it's not
Please,
necessarily always organizations who have them. People have called the office and said, well, you know, can I rent Ryder Park or Carrier Park Pavilion? And is it okay if I bring my own food or get a food truck? And what are we gonna tell? I mean, we can say yes. I mean, or don't even tell me. Just, you know, we're gonna rent you the pavilion. Or we can say, now we know that it is, you have to apply for a permit. So part of now your rental agreement is you apply for a permit and we can collect money for that.
right,
So,
I'm guessing the answer would be, and the board can chime in, is, yeah, you can bring all the food you want. In the community room, for example, they're paying for the kitchen, right? The use of the kitchen.
yep,
Same thing. Now, if they're gonna bring a food truck, here's the permit fee on top of the rental fee.
Exactly,
Correct.
exactly.
right. But if they, for example, at the community room, you brought it up, not me. If they decide not to use the kitchen and have a food truck,
Then they gotta pay a permit fee for the
do
food.
we give them a discount for the for not using the kitchen?
They're choosing not to use the kitchen. My idea is it's their choice. They're renting that environment. If it includes the kitchen, I mean, if it includes the kitchen, you don't have to use the kitchen.
Right, well, first of all, when they rent the kitchen, they get use of the equipment, but they don't get the food. So they're bringing in the food and they're still paying an additional price to run the stove and the
If they use it, yeah.
right, so now the same way, they can defer the payment of the use of those facilities, but if they bring in a food truck, they're gonna pay a permit fee for the food truck.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, I'm just like you, like the devil's advocate every now and again.
As a thought, just I'm trying not to. I'm concerned about the process of vetting and the exceptions and all that becoming onerous on our staff. would it be possible to, or considerable to, rather than give preference to like having to offer to a local one, giving either a discount or on the permit or a free permit, basically. If you want to use Tully's, you can get your food truck. You still need to go through a permit process, but we'll waive the fee because it's a DeWitt business. Versus if you want to bring somebody from the city of Syracuse, they don't have a brick and mortar presence in DeWitt. There's a such and such a fee to go along with that permit for the food truck. And that makes it a lot easier on our staff's end for having to figure out, it's just processing it. Okay, do they have and they could even go through and have, okay, we know these Tully's, Carvel, whatever, Bull and Bear, we have a list that we know, we don't even have to check, they're good. Other ones, somebody would come in, they would, have to explain.
I'm of the mindset that we, because of the time and the processing, all of these things are easily talked about with ours. That we ought to get some type of fee.
Absolutely.
Our other revenue. Right now, there's $19 million budget, right? The lion's share of that falls on the property owners. And so. Each one of our offices, whether it's the rec department or planning and zoning, we're asking these department heads to look at activities that generate revenue. Let's try to offset that. That's become a priority of this board's. And so if we're gonna put another additional duty in a department, there ought to be some revenue that backs it up to help compensate the additional time.
So even if you were gonna give
For example, is a permitting office, and we're building staff in that office, but as we build staff, its operational costs go way up. 80% of our costs are labor related, so revenue is is for the.
So even if we, would you still be agreeable to a lower fee for the DeWitt business?
Yes.
And so having it offset that way of being the differentiation between the two?
And there also, as Ed has said, there is a list, and I'm assuming there's a list that's constantly updated. If it isn't, we'll have one for the businesses in the town. So it won't be that onerous to try to see who is and who is not.
Again, I think a menu, I know you're opposed to complicating the menu, but I do think a menu is warranted, right? I think that, a town structured menu, a single day event versus a
Yes.
week event versus a month event, all that should have been. And I don't think you should preclude someone from saying this is the season, right? He's gonna run a program with a farmer's market for 3 months. Right, so if you're gonna put a 3-month program together, there ought to be a monthly fee at a minimum or a seasonal fee, right, associated, so that a food truck, so that a Wide Waters or one of our local businesses has the ability to meet that same schedule.
But is that schedule also including the out of DeWitt? That I think, but that should be a different price.
Well, sure, but absolutely, but out of DeWitt vendors would pay a premium.
Yes.
It would not be, if I may, it would not be unlike a large portion of what we do every day is we collect rental fees for the pavilions.
Right.
And we stop doing all of that and that goes somewhere else. And it would be pretty much the same. There is a split between residents and non-residents. And it would be the same.
Correct.
Logical.
And back to one of Carrie's original points is, do we cap the number of participating food carts per event? He was saying that he didn't want eight food carts showing up to White Waters. So
If
I
it's a
don't know.
town of DeWitt business that wants a permit to do it.
Depends what the event is.
I was gonna say, like trunk or treat, you had the capacity for 8 vendors, right?
Yep.
It depends, like I say, it depends on the event, like something comparable to a canal day, you'd want quite a selection.
absolutely, I agree.
Yeah,
I mean, the last one we had 3.
Why was that?
Pardon?
I feel like we could have more. Why was it 3? Was that?
Space, we decided on space.
Okay.
So it sounds to me like there's a general agreement on the board to come up with some policy that will allow food trucks on a limited basis with a preference, probably a monetary discount for DeWitt businesses, brick and mortar businesses to be able to but then with a menu, some kind of that. Do you want to put a team together to work with Peter to come up with something to present before the?
Sure, that'd be great.
Love to.
Is there any volunteers?
I'll
Everybody
volunteer.
step backwards.
It's important. We don't want to, but we're doing it.
I would really like a coffee and donuts place like on the road next to mine.
Sarah, I will volunteer too.
Complicated already.
We'll just go to Sarah's house. I will volunteer for that.
You'll be able to put together policies, then I can put them into draft ordinance.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Circulate that.
Thank
I
you.
don't think,
So I have some direction.
Oh, is that okay?
my
Ken?
guess is we're not reinventing the wheel. There's other
No,
ordinances.
There's a couple
You can
online
pull-
already.
They're all in there.
Pull a copy of what you want.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
Are you doing it too, Max? I mean, you brought up.
I thought if I got other people to raise their hands.
No, it's a yes, no question.
You can include me on the emails.
Okay.
Can't have any more than 3 board members, so.
1, 2, 3.
That's
It's
it.
us.
So Mike Wilson might want to join in.
Did he want?
Somebody else at this point.
And have another line for next year.
Yeah.
He wants a job watching the fire hydrant, shouldn't he?
Oh, so I've heard from Matt before, I know.
Paint them.
Yeah, no, he's been very well.
Another line item for next year.
You and Bree are welcome to come for donuts and coffee to Sarah's house.
Well, they're gonna be the-
All right, let's think of that.
We're doing the audit.
Mario, remember? Remember that guy?
All right.
Okay, sign us up.
Hey, food trucks, we're good.
Yay.
End of discussion. Let's jump right back to the top of the agenda. Unless is there someone else here waiting for an issue? Is there something you want to hear? Okay. All right, I'll go to the agenda for the town board minutes of April 10th. Everybody seen the minutes?
Yeah.
I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes from Joe, second from Carrie. Any further discussion? Any edits?
I need to abstain, correct?
Yeah, we're here.
We're here.
Okay,
Sarah can abstain.
I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Same, Sarah? Okay, motion's carried. All right, Rex, the post for MEO.
Yeah, we had a resignation on March 15th. So we're currently canvassing right now. We have 1 position that you guys allowed me to post. So hopefully I'll come to you with a couple candidates who can fill those 2 positions. And I just want to give you an update that 1 worker is back out on compensation, the workers' comp again. And so we're basically down 3 MEOs right now. Like to post for this position, so hopefully I'll be back at the next meeting or the second one in May with a couple candidates for you guys. Any questions?
Rock, is this a new resignation or the one that you've already?
Yeah, no, this is a new one. Yeah.
Same trends going to a higher paying job?
Higher paying job, a better opportunity for his family, his younger kids, so.
MEO ladies is a machine equipment operator. just so you know.
That's where I was.
He's our highway superintendent.
Those are the individuals that maintain our roads and plow the snow. They work for the highway department. Their titles are
Biggest part is.
motor equipment operator.
Energy training.
Oh, thank you.
Senior guys.
I saw the face.
So I'll entertain a resolution to authorize posting. Joe, a second from Karen.
Yes, please.
I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion's carried. Skid steer purchase.
Yes, so sent you some information on a new skid steer. We currently have a 2002 skid steer. What we want to do is upgrade it basically to a track skid steer with a little bit wider mill head, so when we do our paving projects and road patches and potholes that develop, we come and mill an area out. So we're looking to go with a Bobcat, which actually is what we have currently. The guys did look at them, they tried them all out. And Bobcat is actually the cheap of the three. And we did have them look at our machine and the prices were 12 to 14,000 on a trade. So the guys were telling me they'd rather keep that because parks use it and highway uses it. So it was really useful for them. And the Fiddler's Green Trail last year, they were using it. We didn't have use of it. So we're gonna keep that in the fleet. It's really decent shape and it'll work out as a good backup.
The Bobcat you're talking about,
Yeah.
what Linda sent us.
One, and we're looking to purchase them.
I think
There's some more trail work we're looking to do as well.
Cool.
Great.
Yep.
Was this one in the budget?
Yes.
All right.
Wrote it.
Any other questions? Call for the vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Actually, I gotta have a motion first from Joe and a second from Karen. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, motion's carried.
Okay, so the second purchase, this is for parks. We're looking to purchase a mower. What we'd like to do, and we requested last year from JDL, they'd like to have a mower there at Carrier so they could actually manicure the fields, and I understand that. Because when we get busy, and actually we're down one guy right now in parks. So we'd like to purchase a new mower and then leave our older John Deere right there in the storage container next to the gator that they currently use. So they would help us out actually mowing. And this, we do need this to upgrade our mowers in the fleet. We usually have 4 0-turns that are out all day long all summer. This mowing is.
You're aware that Carrier is making that donation of land, correct? And that garage is coming.
Yeah, that would be nice for some storage.
And Carrier has already told me to start to do. Send a.
That'd be
Some
nice.
agreement over while we're working on. And he said, take the old agreement, that would be great. Use this template. Not throw it back at them.
How much more acreage then do you mean?
I don't remember the actual acreage size, the entire area of the silt fence was up around where the. Yeah, it's a rectangle with a smaller appendage off of it that. Picking up, so it's the additional parking.
So we currently have 3 Ferris mowers and 1 John Deere. And so basically what we want to do is add another Ferret. So standardize them. So the blades, belts, it makes it a lot easier when we go to do any repair. We usually stock what we need, fix it, and then right back on the line. 61-inch.
The machine.
So
You know this machine?
Yeah.
comes from the board. And we also did budget for this.
Yeah.
in the parks.
Hey,
So the lowest price we got was White's Farm Supply at $13,800.
that's without the trade.
No trade.
Yeah.
So we're gonna keep the old
Right,
John Deere.
that was great.
Yeah, it's a pretty good price, actually.
That's a good price.
I'll entertain a motion from Jack. Second from Sarah. Call for the vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion's carried.
Thank you.
Okay.
I just want to say, Rocco, if I may, to please thank Linda for putting these together. Her materials are great for reviewing and then doing today. I just wanted you to know that you did a great job.
Okay, well, thank you.
You're
Try to
welcome.
answer as many questions, but there's always something that we can't get in there.
She's got 99.9% of the thing covered.
Okay, Max,
Thanks.
I think Matt got a hold of you at the last minute today with the home rule request.
Yeah, so just to explain the process, it's convoluted for getting this home rule request done, but even though we kind of needed to approve the ask of what we wanted the Senate and Assembly to pass, technically, we can't ask them to pass it until they've already introduced it.
Correct.
So it was introduced into it left the Assembly last week and introduced into the Senate this afternoon. So it is now, it's now been introduced to the state level, so we can now officially request, it get turned in. Matt did confirm that it was, our resolution can be dated the same day today as the introduction into the legislature, so we're all good. So, we just have two separate resolutions.
We have two, one to Senator Mannion, one to Assembly Woman Hunter. And then the home rule requests themselves have to be signed by Ed and certified by Angela, whenever Angela gets back in the office.
Yeah, later this week, Angela will be back and she'll be able to certify those, but everything appears to be on track still at this point, although the state budget not being passed is no action is basically going to be taken on it until.
Understood, but
Yes.
please pass along our thank yous.
Yep, absolutely.
To both offices.
Yeah.
Very, very
They're
appreciative.
very helpful.
Yeah, that's very appreciative.
Yes, Senator Mannion and Assemblymember Hunter and their staffs have been very helpful and very supportive during the process.
Do we anticipate any changes on their end?
Yeah, thank you. So I'll entertain the a motion for the Senate, and the Senate is bill number 56507. So 56507. It's the Senate bill. I have a motion from Max and a second. Jack. I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained, motion's carried, and the Assembly bill number, Pam Hunter, is 6553. Again, 6553. So I'll entertain a motion from Max and a second from Jack. Call for the vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained, motion's carried. What we just did is we passed a couple resolutions to our state elected officials. There's two governing bodies in the state of New York. One's an assembly and one's the Senate. Senator John Mannion is in the Senate. Pamela Hunter is our assembly person. And we've made a request for them to introduce bills that will allow the town of DeWitt to gain 2% room occupancy tax out of its hotels. If those bills are fortunate enough to pass in the Senate and the Assembly, the law would then go to the governor and we need her signature in order to gain that 2% room occupancy tax in our hotels. DeWitt has $100 million in property values in hotels. There's over 30 hotels in the town of DeWitt. Most of them are centered out in the Carrier Circle area. And we have a park that we're constructed that will funnel weekend tournaments, which would hopefully keep some of those hotels occupied. Therefore, it's a mutualistic benefit. We would take that 2% tax and provide things like sidewalks and snow plowing, and we provide police and fire services and street lights and so on for those hotels. So that's the plan going forward. And that's what we just did.
I hope it passes.
Thank you for explaining it.
Thank you. I did call for the vote. Right?
Did.
Okay. All right, so we're moving on to the LWRP. LWRP is Local Waterfront Revitalization Program. We implemented a series of grants, which we're not fully compensated for yet, are we?
For, well, I don't know what comes, the first one, we're still waiting on 11,000,
Okay, but
all the other ones we've gotten reflected what we're.
okay. But anyways, the LWRP is a local waterfront revitalization program. And the town has a couple of eligible bodies of water. And so this process puts additional requirements on our planning and zoning offices, but it's very similar to the State Environmental Quality Review Act. And so a lot of the we call check boxes the LWRP brings on are already accomplished anyways through the State Environmental Quality Review Act. There's a few additional extras, but by approving the document and the grants that we've had in place, it opens us up for eligible funding in the future for implementation of some of these projects. And so we have a resolution that's in our packet that I won't read, but we need to set a public hearing order to finalize the previous performed work, and once we get this public hearing held and finalize the document in its draft right now becomes final, it opens the door for future rounds of WRP. So I'll entertain a motion for setting the public hearing, but I want to know when we're gonna set the public hearing. Is it the next meeting?
No, the sooner the better is out, but without squishing Kate and Angela, so did you have to do the publication and all that stuff?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's gonna be me, but
I'll be back
I
on.
want to do it for May 8th. I can send a notice tomorrow. But I just need a copy of the actual draft from Terry Brown, so I can send it to the board members to review. 10 days ahead.
Okay, I was gonna say, is there a time critical reason? Is LWRP, it's typically part of
I
the
think
state.
it might be time critical for the grant. That's why they're bringing it up to the board. So I think they want it done as soon as possible.
Okay. And I do know a lot of times the funding is tied to the consolidated funding applications, and that usually has like a
As well, the
June,
board,
July submit.
board approves that there's gonna be a 60-day waiting period after that, and whatever other requirements they have, so I think we should do it as soon as possible. The next meeting, I have enough time to do notice, so
Okay, great.
I'll make sure you do that tomorrow.
So we'll set the meeting for May 8th at 6:05.
Yeah.
I'll entertain a motion.
So,
Motion from Karen and a second from Joe. Call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion's carried. Okay, any announcements?
yes, and it's a nice announcement. It has to do with the DeWitt Fire District, and I received, found out this information kind of circuitously, but then I was able to find it on their website, so here we go. It's a good thing. The DeWitt Fire District is proud to announce that Deputy Fire Chief Timothy Cowan has completed the National Fire Academy's Executive Fire Officer Program. The Executive Fire Officer Program is the flagship leadership course series at the National Fire Academy in Emmitsburg, Maryland. Cowan joins only 46 other chief officers from New York State, having achieved this status since the program's inception in 1987. This accomplishment reflects the quality of the men and women that make up the DeWitt Fire District. Professional development opportunities such as the EFO program translate into better service and care for the community we serve. Congratulations, Tim. Well done. So I'm going to give this to you to put Kate into wherever you put the things. That's it, Ed.
Okay, any other announcements for the public session before we enter a executive session? All right, with that, I want to thank everyone for attending tonight. This board has several personnel and contract negotiation discussions to hold an executive session. And therefore, you have to excuse you. If you have anything that needs to be signed. Okay, you already got it. All right, okay.
Your chance.
I thought the food trust thing was cool. I would go.
Okay,
Oh, that's public input.
thank you.
On the record.
Yeah,
Sure.
I'll come back when we have a public hearing.
That's
All right, guys.
All right.
See you later.
Thank you.
Mike and Bree and
Thank you, guys.
Terry, thank you.
Guys, the village too, so you guys.